So we finished 2014, really on a competitive high, having gone over to Australia and made a big total over there, lifetime PR, and entered 2015 with a lot of momentum for myself as a lifter, and also undergoing some big changes potentially with the business. So if you've been following along the whole story, we were in the physical gym location the first couple of years, and then doing some subleasing, moving more to working on the internet, and in late 2014 was approached by some friends who owned a CrossFit gym as they were looking to expand their space, about going into a very big space and sharing that with them. So very end of 2014, we'd seen this space and figured like, okay, let's give this a shot. And in early 2015, we're going through the process with the city and everything that entails, a lot of bureaucratic red tape and everything, and not really knowing if we were going to get approved for use of this space. So from my perspective, the Juggernaut side of things, I'd run a physical gym location. I'd coached every single day athletes and lifters and done that, and it was not something necessarily that I was looking to get back into doing. I wanted to have a physical space to host seminars, as I'd been traveling around the country almost every other weekend, every third weekend for the previous 2 or 3 years, teaching seminars. I wanted to host meets. I wanted to use it sort of as a studio space to create content, but had a associate who'd worked with a lot, who wanted to do more in-person coaching and partner in going back into this physical location. So I saw that as a good situation where he could run the day-to-day coaching business, and I could do what I wanted, run events and use it more as a studio space. So as we finally got approved, I think in about April of 2015 by the city, and it was sort of like this, we were getting to the point where we're like, man, this city's not going to approve us. As days were going by, months were going by, where we'd started the process, I think in October or November of 2014, and it was taking 5 or 6 months for them to put the rubber stamp on there and say go for it. And then all of a sudden it was just like, okay, they approved it. We move in next week. So already I was playing catch up. Like, okay, now we need to order equipment and get all that going. Put the flooring in and get that whole process going. And I was working on that on my own because of some extenuating circumstances for the partner here, and to make a very long story short, as months went by, he just never showed up. So that was some miscalculations on my part from a character judgment standpoint, probably from a business standpoint of not getting things, more formalized operating agreements and everything, which I'd always done a good job of in the previous years. But made a miscalculation, but sort of get left holding the bag on this one in a space that was really cool, in this big awesome space, Juggernaut HQ, but not something that I really wanted to do myself in terms of running a day-to-day gym business. But my name was on the lease. If you're familiar with Southern California real estate and rent, it ain't cheap. So kind of had to figure some things out there. So I'll come back to that in a bit. Meanwhile, I was taking this momentum as a competitor from 2014 into 2015 and just getting stronger and stronger. So early in the year, I think in April or so, I did a meet, my only meet actually, competing in knee sleeves. And that was right around our like opening weekend for this physical gym location. It would have been in April, I think late April 2015. And because everything was so fluid about when we were actually going to get approved for this place, we had set up to host a weightlifting meet months before, thinking it was going to take a matter of weeks to get approved, a conditional use permit for this facility, and that a matter of weeks turned into a matter of months. We're like, man, are we even going to be in here in time to run this meet that this weightlifting meet that we'd set up? So we did, by the skin of our teeth, get approved in time and get everything set up in there to have this sort of debut weekend. And we had a lot of the Team Juggernaut lifters there doing like different demos, and some of them competing, and 70 or 80 weightlifters competing, and Dmitry Klokov visiting to do an exhibition. So that was really cool. But the timing, in hindsight, could not. I should have changed the date on it, but I think it is what it is, and I don't remember the specifics if the meet date I had changed. But anyways, we were hosting the weightlifting meet on a Saturday, and I was competing on Sunday. Not something that I would suggest, but again, as my job is running Juggernaut. My job was not then, it is not now, it never has been, being a professional powerlifter. So the business of Juggernaut has always come first for me over my own competitive interests. And this is really one of the only times that they've butted heads that much. So, Friday we're getting the facility set up. We're, taking plates from one gym to another, getting platforms set up, getting pipe and drape and PA systems and all that stuff. And then running the meet, even though I was not running I'm not in the back room coaching the weightlifters or anything. It's just a stressful experience. And, where I probably ate 3 meals instead of 5 meals that day and was on my feet a little bit too much, but excuses are like assholes. Everyone's got them and they all stink. So the next day I go and compete down in San Diego in my only sleeves meet of my career, and had a good day, not a great day. Totaled 1,010 kilos. So I squatted 848 with 2 very close misses at 904, and then benched a PR, 257.5 kilos, 567, and deadlifted a PR of 810. 367.5 kilos, and the how close these squats at 904 were, it definitely left me thinking, what if I would have gotten to eat one more sandwich the day before, or sit down for an hour more, could I have stood them up maybe? And that was just a interesting meet experience too, because as now I'd traveled to do these big meets in Australia, GPA Worlds. Really nice equipment, very professional setups and stuff. And this was a local meet, and at it, in the warm-up room, they did not have squat bars. So I was, and I'm not one who's very picky or finicky about equipment, as I did most of my training for this meet, leading up to this meet, in a Rogue power rack in the corner of a CrossFit gym with my Texas Power Bar, which is a great bar, but when you put up 400 kilos on it, it gets pretty whippy. So not even Texas Power Bar here in the warm-up room, just kind of like a regular gym bar. And I think my last warm-up was maybe 765 or 785, and the bar was bending so much in the warm-up, that we actually had to put 2 collars on each side of the bar, because it was curved so much that the plates were sliding off. So you had to put the extra collar to hold the plates on. And it was one of the only times, probably the only time, that I thought, this bar it's gonna break. It's gonna break on my back doing this last warm-up set. So it was a stressful thing, but it's fine. It worked out. Went and made some good lifts. Made a pretty solid total and a couple PRs. But that was a fun meet. It competed there head to head with Jake Johns, big boy, who had subsequently I began coaching right after that meet. So that was a fun deal to have. Some back and forth, some pretty solid competition for a local meet at that. So after that meet, we go back and trying to figure out this gym process, and there was just problems. There was just so many problems, from equipment vendors and people saying that stuff is going to be there in 6 to 8 weeks, and then it's 4 to 5 months later, and half of it's there, and a lot of angry emails and angry phone calls, and then running into those people at meets and being angry there. It was a lot of the reasons I was being reminded constantly, maybe on a if not weekly or if not daily, at least a weekly basis of like, this is why you didn't want to go back into running a physical gym location as I dealt with these problems. But as time went, we started getting it together, and we brought in a great group of interns who came from all across the country. I think we let one Canadian in. Even Jared Feather, who's a coach for RP, was an intern for us there. A lot of just really enthusiastic young coaches. So that was a lot of fun to get to help them develop and share, our philosophies with them and spread the good word to people. And now get to see them at meets and everything several years later, and they're doing well, coaching their athletes and expanding upon the stuff that we got to work on with. So then towards the end of 2015, I have another opportunity to compete in Australia again. Really enjoyed that previous experience. So now I was going to go over there for Pro Raw 7, and had great training leading up to that. I think in the gym had squatted 915, which is a pretty significant meet or training PR for me at the time, compared to when I squatted 959 the previous year in knee wraps. I only squatted 865 in training leading up to that. So a big increase there. So I knew I was ready for a big meet, and it was going to get to be head to head with Odell Manuel, phenomenal lifter in Australia, just retired, I believe, after this past Big Dogs as the greatest powerlifter in Australian history. So we got to go head to head. He came out victorious there, but I did make a total PR 1,055 kilos, 23.25. Moved myself up the list a couple spots. Squatted a PR of 970, 440 kilos. Deadlifted a PR of 370 kilos, 815 pounds. Suffered a little bit of a hamstring injury that precluded me from something that was probably foolish planning. I think that hamstring injury may have saved me from myself, because the original plan was to do this Pro Raw meet in Australia, tour around Australia doing seminars for 2.5 weeks, and then go up to a WRPF meet in Russia and compete again. So thankfully this hamstring injury stopped me from doing that, because December in Moscow, as cool as it looked in Rocky IV training montage, was probably not somewhere that I wanted to be. Plus it would have made the trip like a month long. So I get back to California, and with the associate who I said just kind of never showed up. It was right around the time of this meet that I realized, okay, this is not what I thought it was. I need to find another solution now and move on from that situation. And I get presented with the opportunity to have Max Aita come on to Team Juggernaut and work with him. And Max was someone that I'd known for a few years, kind of casually. We'd met at powerlifting, a couple powerlifting meets, competing together. He was there coaching at meets at Super Training, and gotten to talk and gotten along well.
I got to know Chad through a couple of different avenues. First, I remember Chad when he started posting on Elite FTS years ago. I remember seeing him as like, this is the shot put guy that's posting on this powerlifting site. But he always used to put up like pretty cool training logs and that kind of stuff. And I remember when he opened his first space in Orange County, that was kind of one of my goals at one point, was to kind of come down and visit it. And I thought, oh, this would be really cool, and go do this thing and train down there. And I never actually had a chance to get down to that first place. I remember asking Chad at one point in time, when I met him later at a powerlifting meet, hey, is your Orange County gym still open? Like, it'd be kind of cool to come train there. And he was like, no, I shut that down a couple years ago. So I was definitely behind the times there. But, the main way I kind of knew Chad personally was through powerlifting. I had met Chad at a few different meets in NorCal that were hosted by like Mark Bell, like the backyard meet of the century kind of meets. And he was, like different than the other powerlifters. When he talked about training, it was always more analytical, more like, you're talking to somebody who had an idea of, training from a little bit deeper perspective than I was kind of getting in a lot of places. So I really kind of latched onto that, and I really enjoyed a lot of stuff he talked about. Then more so, the times that we connected outside of that was at weightlifting meets. Chad was sponsoring people in weightlifting through Juggernaut, and he would show up to these meets like Nationals and American Open, and he was always kind of like, he would come over and hang out with us because I think we were the only people he knew that were not, like he knew us from powerlifting, so the only people he knew to hang out with.
As Juggernaut and I became more involved in weightlifting, I would go to these weightlifting meets to support our sponsored athletes, but was really showing up there with kind of knowing nobody besides our 5 or 6 sponsored athletes. I was very much a fish out of water, and I'm walking around this USAW meet in 2014 or so, 350, 360 pounds, and like the weightlifters and the weightlifting coaches and the weightlifting community knew that I was not one of them, and I knew that they knew that I was not one of them, and it was always a little uncomfortable for me. So I felt like a lot of them were looking like, why is this powerlifter here? Like, he's not a weightlifter. What's he think he's encroaching on our turf? And the familiar faces that I knew were Max and Joanne, because I knew them from powerlifting meets. So I'd see them at the weightlifting meets, and I'd be like, oh, this powerlifters, they're safe for me to talk to.
And again, we talk about stuff, training and that, and it was always just a lot of fun to kind of get to know him in that regard. And then in addition to that, it was like watching a lot of the stuff he put out, reading a lot of stuff he put out. I always was interested because Chad seemed to have a good sense of putting out information that seemed really good to me, where, at the time there's a ton of information that I didn't agree with that was definitely really common to see. And as time goes on, obviously that changes too, but he was one of the first that I think was putting out like really high quality stuff that was, really interesting to me.
So through a couple experiences like this at different weightlifting meets, we'd gotten to spend more and more time together, grow our friendship. So at the end of 2015, when Max told me that he was looking to kind of make a change professionally there, I was like, this is perfect. If I could have chosen from anyone in the country, any coach that I knew or knew of, Max really would have been my first choice, because not only were he and I philosophically very similar in how we think about training, and then just got along well, same sense of humor and all that kind of stuff. He has such a unique blend of understanding of powerlifting and weightlifting, where I don't really think there's anyone who can match him in the combination of the two.
So around the end of 2015, as a coach, I was in the gym all the time. I was coaching every day, and it kind of came to this point where I felt like I really had kind of painted myself into a corner where I really loved learning. I loved doing this stuff, but I felt like I was never able to get myself into a place where I could, do an internship or learn things or get around more experienced coaches, people with, better knowledge for me to learn from. And, end of 2015 came around, I decided I really wanted to expand that. I really wanted to go ahead and do that kind of thing.
So he was going to be that perfect person to come in, take care of the day-to-day stuff at the gym and be able to take care of both sides of things with both powerlifting and weightlifting. So it was really just a great opportunity, a blessing to have the opportunity to bring Max into the company at that point. He's just been such a great asset from that point, a great friend, a great, just a hard-working guy. So, I couldn't be happier about that opportunity to bring Max in. And that was, for what was in a lot of ways an up and down year in 2015, a really great way to end 2015 as we move into 2016.